Ms. Powers, we can start. We have 8 board members on.
All right, good morning. I'm going to call to order the September 26, 2024 special called board meeting. Tyreen, if you will please call the roll.
Stacy Blakely. Correct. Roderick Frierson.
Present.
Rita Hardage.
Present.
Jennifer Ide. Sagira Jones. Al Pond.
Mr. Pond is here.
I see him. Catherine Powers.
Present.
Rita Scott. Jacob Zagabi. Valencia Williamson.
Present.
Thomas
Tyreen,
Worthy.
Jacob raised his hand.
Jacob's here. He just might not be able to unmute.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And it appears that Ms. Ide is now here as well.
Okay.
Mr. Andrews, are there any public comments to give via email or voicemail?
Yes, ma'am. We've received one email from Mark Albers. It's going to be put into the record verbatim. It's about 2 pages long.
All right.
That's the only thing we have.
All right, thank you. I will now turn it over for a board committee report for the Business Management Committee. Mr. Durrett.
Just a second while I pull it up. Madam Chair, the Business Management Committee met on Thursday, August the 22nd, 2024, and approved the following resolutions. A resolution authorizing the award of a contract for VMware vSphere Foundation Maintenance and Support Services, IFB B50525. B resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for maintenance and support for Oracle Database, ERP, and ID management licenses, P27978. C, a resolution authorizing the renewal of privacy and network security liability insurance coverage. And D, resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for transit and digital advertising services, P48265. I request approval of these resolutions as a motion before this body.
All right. Can I have a motion for approval?
This is
If you
Hardage. I move approval.
All right. If I can have a second.
Frierson, I second.
All right. And then if I may suggest, there is a raise hand button on your Microsoft Teams. So all those in favor, if you will please raise your hand, we'll give Ms. Huff an opportunity to count all the.
Thank you.
Katie, if I may, Tyreen, if you wouldn't mind, if people are watching on YouTube, they can't see the raised hands. So would you mind just reading off the affirmative votes for the public, please?
Okay. Stacy Blakely, James Durrett, Roderick Frierson, Rita Hardage, Jennifer Ide, Sagira Jones, Al Pond, Catherine Powers, Jacob Zagabi, Valencia Williamson, Thomas Worthy, and I don't see. Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. So it passes. The resolutions pass, and I guess next time we'll just all for those who have their video muted, we'll keep them unmuted for the YouTube for the public to be able to see, and we'll do it by raised hand vote for Ms. Huff to count. Are there any other matters to come before the board?
No, ma'am.
Any comments from the board? The specially called MARTA Board of Directors meeting is adjourned. We will now move to the committee meetings. we'll turn it over to you, Mr. Durrett.
All righty. I'll call to order the Business Management Committee meeting for Thursday, September 26, 2024. The first item on our agenda is approval of our August 22nd, 2024 Business Management Committee meeting minutes.
Move
This
for
is
approval.
Hartage. I second. This is Hartage.
Before we vote on that, Thomas, Jennifer, and Mr. Pond, is it okay if we put your hands down? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Katie, do you want us to go ahead and vote?
Sure, and we'll do it by unmuting your cameras and raising your hands since the public needs to be able to observe it via YouTube. You can please unmute your cameras and raise your hand instead of doing it via the Teams app. The public cannot see that.
So, Ms. Powers, I think that the camera on YouTube, I just turned it off, apologize, but just shows the agenda. It doesn't show any of
Okay.
you all. So we're going to have to do it verbally one way or another. Sorry.
Okay, never mind. We can go back to the raised hands function then on Teams. If everybody can, if you're in favor, please raise your hand.
And then I'll read. Okay. Stacy Blakely, James Durrett, Roger Frierson, Frida Hartage, Jennifer Ide, Tagira Jones, Al Pond, Catherine Powers, Jacob Zagabi, Valencia Williamson, Thomas Worthy.
All right, the resolution passes.
Okay, so now that we've got the minutes from the last meeting approved, the next item on our agenda is a resolution authorizing a one-time cost of living bonus for the retirees and beneficiaries of the MARTA non-represented pension plan. LaShonda Dawkins, Assistant General Manager of Labor Relations, will present this to us for consideration. LaShonda?
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Durrett and Ms. Williamson, Business Management Committee members, Mr. Hurley and Mr. Greenwood. I am before you this morning in my capacity as the Chair of the Non-Represented Pension Committee, seeking your approval and recommendation to the full Board of Directors to approve a resolution to authorize a one-time cost of living bonus for the retirees and beneficiaries of the MARTA non-represented pension plan to be paid in January of 2025. To be eligible for the cost of living bonus, the participant must have been in payment status as of January 1st, 2024. Next slide, please. The Management Pension Committee recommends that the retirees of the MARTA non-represented pension plan receive a one-time lump sum bonus equivalent to a monthly check with a minimum benefit of $750 and a maximum benefit payment of $5,000. So if I'm a retiree and my normal monthly check is $500, I will receive a bonus of $750. However, if I am a retiree and my monthly check is $6,500, I will receive a payment of $5,000. There are approximately 1,457 impacted individuals in the eligible retirees and beneficiaries group. Additionally, the minimum benefit of $750 represents 3% of the average annual benefit for our retirees, which currently is approximately $24,751. The plan's actuary has determined that this action will have an approximate one-time cost of $3,032,000 to the pension plan. Next slide, please. As you may know, MARTA maintains a defined benefit plan covering its non-represented employees, which was originally adopted January 1st, 1958. It is now a completely closed plan. It was closed to all newly hired non-represented employees in 2005, excluding the police. And as of January 1st, 2008, our retirees, beneficiaries, and drop participants were entitled to receive an automatic 1% annual cost of living increase. Subsequently, the plan closed to newly hired police effective January 1st, 2015. To reduce the unfunded liability of the plan, thereby producing cost savings to MARTA, the MARTA Board of Directors passed a resolution upon the recommendation of the Management Pension Committee authorizing the elimination of the 1% annual cost of living increase for the retirees, beneficiaries, and drop participants in February 2017. In accordance with this action, the Management Pension Committee committed to annually review and consider the adequacy of retirees' pension benefits under the plan with respect to a cost of living adjustment and MARTA's financial condition and ability to fund a cost of living adjustment. The terms of this commitment were memorialized in the cost of living adjustment policy. The policy was implemented to establish the procedures and guidelines for such review by the Management Pension Committee. The effective date of this COLA policy was October 12, 2017. Finally, as of January 1st, 2018, the plan was restated through plan amendments and has completely closed in that represented employees hired prior to 2005 transferring into a non-represented pension position do not have the option any longer to participate in the defined benefit plan covering its non-represented employees. They will move into the defined contribution plan as our new hires do currently. Since the elimination of the automatic 1% COLA, the retirees received a cost of living adjustment January 2019 for the plan's performance ended December 31st, 2017. Again, January 2022 for the plan's performance ended December 31st, 2020. And lastly, January 2023 for the plan's performance ended December 31st, 2021. Next slide, please. In accordance with the COLA policy, the Management Pension Committee, with the guidance of the plan actuaries, reviewed the rate of return for the plan year ended December 31st, 2023, the funded position of the plan, and the consumer price index data for the most recent preceding 12-month period. The respective rate of return was 11% as compared to our actuarial assumption of 5.5%. The funded position of the plan as of December 31st, 2023 was 82.36%. And the consumer price index data reviewed was averaging around 3.27%. After careful consideration of the respective information, the Management Pension Committee determined that the plan enjoyed a favorable year in 2023, which may justify approving a cost of living bonus for the eligible retirees and beneficiaries. During the committee's deliberations, the committee was motivated to ensure that those retirees who have the lowest monthly benefit receive appropriate consideration in our COLA recommendation, and opined that the maximum range approach would accomplish the intended result. Therefore, the Management Pension Committee recommends that the retirees and beneficiaries of the MARTA non-represented pension plan receive a one-time lump sum bonus equivalent to an additional monthly check with a minimum benefit of $750 and a maximum benefit of $5,000 to be paid in January 2025. The Management Pension Committee is authorized to recommend cost of living adjustment increases for retirees to the MARTA Board of Directors for consideration. The board, in its sole discretion, will determine whether pension benefits will be increased for a cost of living bonus. And so I conclude by respectfully requesting this committee's approval of this resolution to authorize a one-time lump sum benefit equivalent of an additional monthly check with a minimum benefit of $750 and a maximum benefit of $5,000. Thank you.
LaShonda, is there a final slide? Oh, okay. All right. So the resolution has been presented to us. I'll entertain a motion for approval and a second.
Williamson, Hardage, motion to approve. I second. This is Hardage.
Okay, so Valencia made the motion, Ms. Hardage seconded it. Is there discussion or questions for LaShonda?
LaShonda, I have a question. This is Rod Frierson.
Yes, sir.
How often does the pension committee meet?
We meet quarterly.
Quarterly? All right, okay. And you mentioned I guess the index that you mentioned. You mentioned a range of 5.5% to an actual 11%.
Yes.
What was that? What was that referring to?
So that's our actuarial assumption. So the
All right.
5.5% is the percent we're striving for in terms of what we want to gain in our position as it relates to the investments of the plan. We want to meet that target.
All
and
right.
that 11% demonstrates we doubled our target. So
Okay. All right. So 11% is the actual performance of the funds.
exactly.
All right. Okay, great.
Ms. Blakely?
That's good. Thank you.
Hi, LaShonda. I didn't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you all for taking care of those who have spent considerable time serving our organization. So thank you guys for all of your hard work.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Then I'll call for the vote. Let's raise our hands and have Tyreen call out the results.
Okay, I see 10 hands raised. Who? 11. Okay, and I should have 12 total, and I'm not seeing 12 hands. Okay. All right. Stacy Blakely, Jim Durrett, Roderick Frierson, Frida Hardage, Jennifer Ide, Sagira Jones, Al Pond, Catherine Powers, Rita Scott, Jacob Zagabi, Valencia Williamson, Thomas Worthy.
Okay, let's put our hands down.
Okay.
Does anybody vote no? Jennifer, all right, you got your hand down. Anybody vote no? Tyreen, can you see?
Yes.
No,
Good.
no votes?
No votes, but actually it's 11 yes, and Rita Scott is still having some issues. They're working with her, so she didn't vote.
Okay. And any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. LaShonda, thank you for the presentation, and like Stacy said, thank you for the good work. So we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a briefing from Greg Patterson, Deputy Chief of Finance, who's going to share with us fiscal year 2024 year-end financial highlights. Greg, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Chair Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and members of the Business Management Committee. It is my pleasure to present MARTA's financial highlights for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. Next slide, please. All right, we'll be starting out with our operating budget highlights. Next slide, please. At a summary level, MARTA budgeted operating sources of $632.4 million. That includes net revenue and operating carry forward, which you see at those top two lines. Our actual revenue was $200,000 favorable for the fiscal year. Our net expenses were budgeted at $631.4 million, but ended the year $21.5 million unfavorable to budget. And that was largely driven by cost allocation, which we'll see on the detailed breakdown. The net impact of this was an unfavorable variance of $20.3 million for the fiscal year. Next slide, please. Now presenting in detail, I'll start with the favorable revenues. The largest takeaway I would offer is that MARTA benefited from phenomenal sales tax revenue, which helped offset the unfavorable results we saw in passenger revenue. As you may remember from some of the other briefings I gave throughout the fiscal year, our ridership forecast was adjusted downward after we had already locked in the annual budget, which includes the revenue projections we had for passenger revenue. So that explains part of the unfavorable results we see in passenger revenue. You'll also see that trend on the key performance indicators later in the presentation. But the other part of it was explained largely through fare evasion and non-collection. That's the other major contributing factor. With respect to year-to-date expenses, salaries and wages were favorable by $17.2 million due to higher than forecasted position vacancies throughout the year. We had originally budgeted and planned a 6% vacancy, but we were sitting somewhere between 10 and 11% all throughout the year. That was also the primary driver for the favorable benefits of $13.7 million. Meanwhile, overtime finished unfavorable to budget by $4.5 million due to a combination of absenteeism and the ongoing vacancies and turnover we experienced. Specific to operations, for example, we observed a turnover rate of around 25.7% and unscheduled absenteeism of 13.8%. Contractual services ended at $1.8 million favorable to budget. This was driven by underutilized external support services, revenue vehicle maintenance, and miscellaneous service contract expenses. And those were offsetting the increase in cost for contracted paratransit services. Total materials and supplies ended unfavorable to budget by $4.9 million, and this was driven by a greater than forecasted number of rebuilds, repairs, and auxiliary replacement parts. Other non-labor came in at $10.2 million unfavorable due to the sharp increase in third-party liability expenses. Finally, capital cost allocation was our largest contributor to the unfavorable annual position. As a reminder, this represents labor expenses deducted from operating and then applied to capital projects. This finished lower than forecasted by $34.6 million. Now, this is driven by lower than forecasted direct charges to capital projects, which is a combination of vacant positions not charging time to it, insufficient timesheet coding, and then slower than forecasted progress on some specific capital projects. I do want to note, though, while this results in an overrun on operating expenses, it also results in an underrun on capital charges from a net effect. Next slide, please. Moving on to the financial performance for the month of June, revenues were unfavorable by $8.7 million and expenses were unfavorable by $12.5 million. The net impact of this was a $24.8 million deficit for the month of June. You may also notice we had a budgeted deficit of $3.6 million. This is because we applied our prior year carry forward at a surplus level in the month of May, which then was offset in June. Next slide, please. Breaking it down on the revenue side, sales tax was favorable by $1.8 million for the same ongoing reason, a great local economy and the price impact of inflation. Passenger revenue was $1.1 million below the forecast, largely due to the same impacts we discussed on the previous slide. Other revenues were unfavorable by $6.8 million, and this is because we budgeted the majority of our investment interest revenue in the month of June, but we ended up recognizing higher than forecast revenues in the other months of the fiscal year. On the expenses side, the major takeaways here is that we had contractual services unfavorable to budget due to higher than forecasted system operation services and the cost of contracted paratransit services. Other non-labor expenses were $3.3 million unfavorable to budget due to our third-party liability costs. And the capital charges were unfavorable to budget due to the reasons I mentioned on the previous slide. The next slide, please. Moving on to our key performance indicators. Next slide, please. For passenger revenues, I will remind the committee we did have accounting corrections in January and February, which threw off the trend line. Overall, we saw lower than forecasted passenger revenue. Fare evasion and non-collection, as I mentioned before, are the primary results outside of it being a revised forecast that didn't match up, revised ridership forecast that didn't match up to the revenue forecast, that is. Next slide, please. On the ridership figures for bus, we ended the fiscal year slightly below the forecast, but above fiscal year 2023. We were just below by about 100,000 only trips. Next slide, please. And as we see on rail ridership, we actually accomplished the forecast in the month of June and also matched the prior year ridership figures as well. Next slide, please. All right, I will now hand the presentation off to my highly esteemed colleague, Mr. Clayton Agarwal, to provide the capital highlights.
You'll need to unmute.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning, Chair Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and esteemed members of the Business Management Committee. My name is Clayton Agarwal. I'm the Acting Assistant General Manager for the Centralized Program Management Office, and it's my extreme pleasure to present the capital highlights for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, in this slide, we will dive deep into the State of Good Repair program, starting with the funding sources and the usage of those funding sources. As far as the funding sources go, we started the year with a beginning balance of $67.7 million, which was significantly higher than what we had projected starting the year. This was because we had a spillover from expenditures not realized in the previous years that made their way into FY24. Sales tax, our realized revenues came in favorable at $270.3 million compared to the budgeted amount of $260.5 million. Our federal and state funds, we were able to realize $45.7 million compared to the initial projected $84 million. I will remind the committee that this is because we filed for reimbursements for federal and state funds. And as far as the other revenue goes, the major component of the other revenue is interest revenues. That came in favorable by $2.7 million. The reserves utilization came in at $188.5 million compared to the initial projected $150 million. Again, this is because some of the projects that we anticipated to utilize the reserves didn't progress as planned. As far as the debt issue, we didn't have a need for debt issuance, and that's the reason that is at a zero compared to an initial planned value of $125 million. Regarding the uses, this section breaks our program down, our State of Good Repair program down into the FTA mandated asset categories. On the facilities and station side, we were able to accomplish about $110 million worth of work compared to $130 million that was initially planned. That was more than 85% of our initial plan value. On the maintenance of way, we came in just shy of $10 million compared to the planned value of $10.2 million. Non-asset, these are our consulting charges that came in at about $63.7 million compared to $102 that was initially planned. On our systems, which constitutes our escalator programs, our elevator programs, came in about $87 million compared to the $120 million that was initially planned. Our vehicles came in at about $78.1 million compared to $94.1 million budgeted for fiscal year 24. When we look at the entire State of Good Repair program, we can see that the team did such a remarkable job, and we came in more than 75% of the entire CIP, we were able to deliver about $348.5 million worth of work compared to $456.3. Including the debt service, we completed more than 80% of the work that was planned in FY24. Next slide, please. And again, just to articulate the significance of the amount of work that was accomplished, comparing the work that was performed in the 4 years, FY20 through FY23, we used to average about 68% of the planned value that we were able to deliver. In FY24, we were able to accomplish more than 3/4 of the work that we said we would perform. Next slide, please. As a reminder to the management committee, we had some conversations during last year where we talked about the work that is performed, the expenditures that we realize in Q1 and Q2 of the fiscal year. And this is because we perform annual accruals at MARTA and not monthly accruals. This really results in a lag between the work that is performed and when the expenditures actually hit our financial system of record. Again, overall, we were able to see a progressive increase in the work that was performed and expended against our capital program throughout the year. Next slide, please. Okay, looking at this slide really talks about the top 10 programs within our State of Good Repair program. The crowning jewel really was our station rehabilitation program, where we were able to deliver more than what we had initially planned. And this was really because we were able to take money from some of the projects that weren't going as performed. 3 of the major stations that come to mind are the airport station, the 5 Point station, and the Indian Creek station. We were able to perform $19 million, $17 million, and $10.5 million worth of work for each one of these stations. For the CQ400, really good news. The design is progressing really well. The committee may recall that due to externalities beyond our control, there was a change order in the amount of $57 million that was approved last year in FY24. Of that amount, $25 million was paid because of these changes in FY24. The good news, again, is the first 4-car train set is currently being undergoing commissioning testing, I should say, at Stadler's facilities. And we are on track to receive the first batch of these cars in January of 2025. On the parking lot repair program, again, really good news. We were able to perform more than $20 million worth of work, and we delivered 5 sites in FY24. There are 2 sites that are currently where construction is currently underway, and those are Chambly and Westlake. Construction on Eastlake will begin once the North Bed Bridge is constructed later in the year. On the MARTA site relocation project, we didn't progress as we planned because of some negotiations with the general contractor that took us more time than we expected, but construction is very much underway, and we are looking to bring our team from the annex into the HQ by December of 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, moving into our More MARTA City of Atlanta program, the framework of this slide is very similar to what we saw with the State of Good Repair program, where we segment this slide into the funding sources and the uses. Again, beginning balance came in more favorable than what we initially planned at $216.5 million compared to $175.4 million. Our realized revenues were again favorable, coming in at $55.8 compared to the initial budgeted amount of $53.7 million. Our federal and state funds, again, we were only able to realize $4.8 million of the anticipated $49.5 million. Other revenue again came in favorable at 10 million compared to the 3.5 that we initially budgeted. On the uses, we were able to spend about 38 million for our More MARTA Atlanta program. Next slide, please. I do want to preface this slide by saying that our goal starting the year FY24 was to move a lot of these projects into construction and also perform the right-of-way for several of these projects. Starting off with our MARTA Rapid Summer Hill project, we came in a little short of what we had planned to do due to unforeseen site utilities that we encountered. The good news is we are working with the general contractor to mitigate the impact of these disruptions and still pull in the revenue start date of July 25th, 2025. On the 5-point station transformation, this project is currently undergoing a redesign. And again, the reason for only performing about $11.4 million worth of work is because we had intended to be in construction in October of 2023. Most of these projects, esteemed members, carry about 75 to 85% of their overall costs within construction. So not moving the projects into construction does impact our expenditures and our ability to deliver these projects. On the Cleveland ART, we are currently repackaging the work to include some of our other business partners' scope of work, and the project is awaiting going out for bidding. On the Clifton project, the project is really pending coordination for right-of-way acquisition, and it's also pending a LPA. On the MARTA Rapid Campbellton Greenbrier project, the LPA was approved in May of 2024, but we are still investigating alternatives on this project. On the Streetcar East extension, we were able to complete some of the board-requested studies, and those studies were actually completed in April of 2024. The design is very much underway, and we expect the design to be finished by January of 2025. Next slide, please. Moving into our More MARTA Clayton County program, again, looking at the funding sources and the uses of the funds, our beginning balance came in favorable by 6.7 million at a total of 216.7 million. Our realized revenue, again, was favorable, coming in at 34.6 million compared to the initially anticipated budget of 33.4 million. Our federal and state funds, again, we only had a need for $400,000 compared to the initially planned $2.1 million. Other revenue, including interest revenue, came in at about 10.1 million compared to the 4.7 million. Our uses, we were able to expend about $8.7 million for the More MARTA Clayton County program. Next slide, please. Okay, the top 5 projects for FY24 for our More MARTA Clayton County program, starting with the Clayton Multipurpose Operations and Maintenance Facility, we ended up expending slightly more than what we had initially planned because we had to move people out of the building prior to the demolition. The board committee may recall that this project has 2 phases. The demolition phase, which we expect to start in the October-November timeframe, and a second phase, which really constitutes the build-out. The design of the build-out is underway, and there is a little bit of redesign that we are doing to bring the project into its initial project budget of 302 million. On the MARTA Rapid South Lake project, the LPA was changed, and that's the reason the design didn't really progress as much as we had hoped it would in FY24. On the Transit Hub project, the Justice Center Transit Hub project, there is a little bit of a negative $730,000, and that's really because it's really a timing issue. I believe that the accruals that were booked against that project actually came in a little high. It's really an administrative issue on that project. Next slide, please. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Durrett.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you for that presentation. Mr. Pond, you've got a question or a comment?
Yes, I've got a question, or really two together, for Greg Patterson. But going back to your presentation on the operational issues and some cost variances, we talked about in the collections, fair evasion and non-collection. That was one part. And then in the capital charges, you talked about charging time, which is an internal thing. So I guess my question is what are we planning to do? Because it seems to me those things we can be proactive and put a focus on correcting that. So you've got two issues. I know you've got technology issues with the fare collection, but again, we talked about fare evasion. I mean, just asking what are the thoughts on stepping that up?
Yeah, Kali. Kali.
Yeah, thank you, Al. Great question. I will say that that's been a significant focus of the C-suite in the past several meetings that we've had. Each chief has brought to bear a plan that they have inside of their specific areas to work together to bring fare evasion down to as low as reasonably possible. Of course, we recognize that this is something that's going on across the country, but in terms of the design of the new fare gates that Rhonda's looking at, that's fare evasion is one of our key decision points in terms of what kind of technology we're bringing, how the fare gates operate. Chief Creer's working with his team to figure out a more robust fare enforcement program in terms of in the stations being on the line. George Wright on the ops team is working with the transitional workers to bring more eyes to bear on the line there. So at the end of the day, within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we will have a plan that we wish to bring forward to the board to just get your blessing in terms of how we're going to move forward on fare evasion.
Go ahead, Al.
And the second piece of that, there was several things doing with capital charges, possibly not putting time to projects in the organization. I don't know if that was a big part of that, but there were a couple of things on the capital charges piece.
It was a piece of it, and I'll speak a little bit to that. So I think that the two primary elements that were the largest drivers of it was simply a combination of the position vacancies, because if someone's not in that position, and then charging their time to it. The way our capital allocation works is a % of indirect charges are applied to the direct charges. So you need a certain number of direct charges to also then apply the indirect charges. So it has a somewhat multiplicative effect on it. Filling those vacancies is something that we have been working pretty steadily on. And I can state that definitely on the capital side, and I'll let Mr. Agarwal speak more to it, but they've definitely been starting to fill out those positions. So we should see that improve in respect to that. And then when it comes to the progress on projects and the actual charging to them, we are investigating internally, making sure that folks are billing correctly to the projects. That's a recent effort that we're digging more into now that we've had a chance to look at a full year's worth of the results. And then again, some of the non-performance we had in some of the other programs resulted in some of what we're seeing here. But I'll let Mr. Agarwal speak to more if you choose.
Just to add on to, thank you, Greg. Just to add on to what you said, I would say that we are seeing significant hiring, especially on the capital side. I think we have about half a dozen offers that are out there with more interviews scheduled so that we can build this team out and continue delivering the program.
Sagira Jones.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Just thinking about thinking through fare evasion, I'm sure some of you have seen the news about the people killed in New York when officers shot into a crowd of people because someone jumped the turnstiles. So just wanting to ensure that when we're thinking about fare evasion, what the bigger picture is and what it means to enforce that and thinking through alternate ways to that type of physical reaction.
Yes, thank you, Segura. We're very much part of our consideration is the balance between collecting a fare and keeping a peaceful, safe environment.
Chief Crayer, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to mention on that case in particular, that did start off as a fare evasion case. However, that individual did produce a knife and attempted to assault the officers before they had to take lethal action. So while fare evasion is part of that that case, and I discussed this with the C team a couple of days now, that you're absolutely right. We do have to come up with innovative ways of enforcing fare without having conflict. So we're definitely on top of that.
And I'll point out that the uncollected really has to do with when we have on the buses a glitch in how the breeze cards are able to tap into the device. So when that happens, the operators allow people to come on the bus, and that's uncollected fares. So that's where that comes from. Any other questions for the two who presented? Okay, is there any other matter to come before this committee? Then we will draw this Business Management Committee meeting to a close, and I'm not sure who's next.
We're going to move to operations and safety.
Thank you.
Maybe not. No, what's on my screen is planning and capital projects. I apologize, Ms. Blakely.
No worries, no worries. I would like to call to order the Planning and Capital Programs Committee meeting for Thursday, September 26, 2024. Tyreen, would you please call the roll? Or do we need to do that again?
I don't think we need to do it again.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, first item on the agenda is the approval of the August 22nd, 2024 Planning and Capital Programs Committee meeting minutes. Can I have a motion and a second?
This is Hartage. I move.
I'll second Jim Durrett.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion comments? Hearing none, let us vote.
That's surely 11. Is someone still need to vote? Stacy Blakely, James Durrett, Roger Frierson, Frida Hartage, Jennifer Ide, Segura Jones, Al Pond, Catherine Powers, Rita Scott, Jacob Zagabi, Valencia Williamson, Thomas Worthy.
Any no's or abstentions, Tyree?
No.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for Clayton County Multi-Purpose Operations and Maintenance Facility demolition. IFB B50330, Ms. Kelly Davis, Director of Facilities Program Management. Take it away, Kelly.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Blakely. Good morning, Chair Blakely, Vice Chair Powers, Mr. Greenwood, Acting Chief Peart, and other MARTA board members. My name is Kelly Davis, and I'm the Director of the Facilities Program Management Group in our Capital Delivery Team. And I am here to ask for a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the site demolition for the Clayton County Multi-Purpose Operations and Maintenance Facility, IFB B 50330. Next slide, please. A little bit of background for you. This is for the forthcoming Clayton County Office and Maintenance Facility that we have there. And in 2019, we did an evaluation of the top sites, which we concluded with your approval of the site referenced as the former Kmart Distribution Center on Old Dixie Highway in Forest Park, Georgia. In June of 2022, the smaller building is 290 square feet, and the larger building is just over 1 million square feet. In September 22, the demolition design began and was completed this January. In May of 2024, we did open the procurement for a demolition vendor and did a bid advertisement. In June, we received 5 bids from respondents, and the lowest responsible and responsive bidder has been selected. Next slide, please. The purpose of this effort is for, again, the forthcoming Clayton County Multi-Purpose Operations and Maintenance Facility, which will support MARTA's service expansion, supplement existing maintenance facilities, and improve MARTA's existing bus network in Clayton County. What we are doing is looking for the procurement of demolition services from a single firm and team to demolish the existing site for the construction of the Clayton County Multi-Purpose Operations and Maintenance Facility. The specific expertise required in returning this contract includes, but is not limited to, demolition of 2 existing buildings, on-site utilities, pavement and other features, construction of a perimeter fence, erosion control during the demolition, and stabilization of all disturbed areas. Next slide, please. The cost of this will be $1,965,600, and the term is 1 year. The schedule of the demolition is slated to start in October 2024, but that is pending FCA approvals that we're waiting for. So we have 2 parallel paths for this. One is the demolition of the current site, and we are also completing the design of the new facility. That design did begin in July 2023. We're looking to have it completed in December of this year. From there, we will go to construction procurement and actual construction, and we are looking to have the entire facility open and operational in 2029. Next slide, please. With that, the recommendation is for the approval of a resolution authorizing GM/CEO or his delegate to enter into a contract for the site demolition for the Clayton County Multi-Purpose Operations and Maintenance Facility, IFB B5330, with complete demolition services. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion did assign a 25% DBE goal on this project. Complete Demolition Services has met the assigned goal by using a word to Pauling LLC, who is a DBE. Next slide, please. With that, I respectfully ask for a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the demolition of the future Clayton County Multi-Purpose Operations and Maintenance Facility, IFB B5330. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions.
I'll move approval.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion for Ms. Davis? Mr. Durrett?
Nope, that's me voting yes.
Oh, Mr. Frierson?
Yes, Kelly. On the previous slide, you mentioned the demolition company. Is that company a minority company? You said we met our DBE goal.
They are not a minority company, but they are using Royalty Hauling, who is a certified DBE. So using them,
so are they exceeding? Can you go back to your previous slide? Number 5, go to slide. Okay. So they are using a DBE company in this process. Do we know, we exceeded the 25%?
I don't have that information in front of me, but I can get it and get it over to you. But they have met the 25%. I'm not sure if they exceeded it.
Okay. So they have met. So the minimum they did was 25%. We're sure of that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And during this demolition process, are there any benefits for us from all this material that's coming through this whole process that we are that helps to reduce the cost of this project, or it's just their responsibility to handle all the material, recycle all the materials? How does that work?
So we did receive a benefit, but it's not actually in the benefit of a cost savings. What happened was our internal estimate to do this work was about $18 million. The company that came in, you see, is $1.9 million. So there's significant savings to the project, but
Right.
that savings is because the vendor will be getting money back from this. They're going
Okay.
to sell the materials.
Okay, that makes sense to offset their cost.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's good. That's pretty reasonable price. All right, thank you. That's all I have, Kelly.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ms. Williams, do you have a question? I see your hand is raised.
No, I was voting.
I do have a question for Collie. This is Rod.
Go ahead, Mr.
Collie,
Carson.
when we selected this site, I know it's adjacent to rail. Is that right? Was there any thought of rail being a part of this complex? I'm just kind of refreshing my memory on it in terms of us maybe using rail at some point down the line as this site is being developed out.
No, sir. It was
No?
it's strictly a bus maintenance facility.
It is? Okay. All right, great. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify a few comments about the DBE. Nobody's met anything yet. They've agreed to the goal because no work has been done. So the goal they're aiming for is 25%. They could exceed it, but their goal is 25%. So nothing's been met yet. It's just the promise to try and get to that goal. So I just wanted to be clear on that. I'm sure Paula's going to add some more.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Scott? Oh, wait.
Yes, well, my question, I think Peter may have answered part of my question because my question was about the DBE goal, whether or not they were considered the prime and they expected to subcontract out to meet that goal. So I think he's given me a little bit of validity to my question.
And Ms. Nash, would you like to go ahead and chime in?
Yes, I would, and I'll kind of answer both of those questions. So the hauling company, I think it's Royalty Hauling, is not the prime. So the prime has subcontracted with Royalty Hauling, which will, and they have made the commitment. So Peter is correct. They haven't met the goal yet because the project hasn't started, but they did commit. What we require is that when they provide their DBE companies, that they also send in a commitment form. So they have committed to 25% DBE for this project. And that will be through the Royalty Hauling.
Okay. So Complete Demolition Services is the prime.
It's the prime, yes, Complete Demolition.
And then they expect to meet that goal through the subcontractor, which would be the Royalty Hauling.
Correct. Yes.
And then another question somewhat along the lines that Mr. Frierson had, and that is, I believe, if I remember correctly, there was some to make sure we also had agreement with CSX based upon the location. The railroad location, was there a need to get support from CSX?
I'm going to ask Kelly if she's got a line on that. I mean, clearly we weren't planning to operate rail in or out of the facility. The proximity to CSX is something that I'm not sure if that was, as long as we weren't on their right of way or operating along it. But Kelly, if there's any more than I'm aware, can you shed some light on that?
The only thing we would need to do, if during the construction, if we get close to their right of way, we would have to hire what we call fire watch, just to make sure that we don't impede on their operations. But otherwise, there's no agreement that we have from the construction standpoint of CSX.
Okay.
Right, because I know that normally they also have right of way to X amount of land around each side of the railroad. And that's why I'm
Right.
asking, even though we aren't using the railroad per se, they also have access and right based upon that. We just went through something very similar in Stone Mountain with a lot of issues. So I remember that being a question.
Yes, ma'am, but we do handle that on the project team side. We handle all coordination, also with our utilities team to make sure that we check all the boxes with, partnering utilities.
Thank you.
And if there are no more questions, can we please vote?
Okay, 11 votes. Stacy Blakely, James Durrett, Roger Frierson, Frida Hardage, Jennifer Ide, Tagara Jones, Al Pond, Catherine Powers, Rita Scott, Valencia Williamson, Thomas Worthy.
Any noes or abstentions?
No.
Thank you. The resolution passes. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for architectural and engineering design services for South DeKalb Transit Hub, AE 50294. Mr. AJ Joshi, Director of Expansion Program Management.
Well, good morning, Chair Blakely, Vice Chair Powers, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Pert, and members of the committee. Today I will be presenting or requesting a resolution authorizing award of a contract for procurement of final design services of the South DeKalb Transit Hub, AE 50294. Next slide, please. Just to give a little bit of background or history, on July 27th, 2023, MARTA came before the PCP committee to request a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals. On August the 10th, 2023, the board approved this resolution to conduct a procurement of final design services for South DeKalb Transit Hub. On March the 7th, we received 6 qualification statements from A&E firms, which were then evaluated by our source evaluation committee, who then shortlisted 4 firms. On June the 4th, oral interviews were conducted with the 4 shortlisted firms. Next slide, please. A little bit of background about the contract itself. This is for the procurement of A&E services, which will encompass multi-disciplines for doing the final design for South DeKalb Transit Hub. This includes project management, systems design, safety certification, and public engagement support services. The proposal that came in the proposal that we're requesting award of is for $3,452,659. And the total cost of this project is $37.5 million, of which construction is estimated at $25 million. And the remaining program costs, that includes right-of-way acquisitions, as well as construction activities and soft costs, comes in at about $9 million. This is all based off of our 30% design cost estimates. We have received $25 million in grant funding in FY24 for buses and bus facilities. This grant funding can be used towards final design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction activities. We do estimate construction to start in early 2026 and complete in 2027. Next slide, please. So we are recommending the approval of the selected prime, which is H&TB for this effort. So the SEC recommends the approval of a resolution authorizing the general manager, CEO, or his delegate to enter into a contract for the procurement of final design services for South DeKalb Transit Hub, AE 50294 with H&TB. H&TV has met the Office of Diversity and Inclusion goal of 26%. They've actually committed, well, they have not met the goal, but they are seeking to fulfill the goal of 26% and have committed to exceeding that goal to 30%. They have included a list of DBEs, which includes Acura, Facet Engineering, Hummingbird Firm, Sykes Consulting, and Sylvatica Studio. Next slide, please. So with that, we respectfully request a resolution authorizing award of a contract for procurement of final design services of the South DeKalb Transit Hub AE 50294.
Worthy moves approval.
Thank you.
I'll second
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, Mr. Joshi, for the presentation. The resolution has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? No? Wait, please vote.
Hey, Tyreen, were you able to make out who made the second? I missed it.
It was me, Jim Durrett.
Thanks,
Mr.
Jim.
Durrett. Yeah.
And going forward, can you guys allow me to at least thank the presenter before you guys start making motions? Thank you.
11 votes. Stacy Blakely, James Durrett, Roderick Farson, Frida Harlich, Jennifer Ide, Segura Jones, Al Pond, Catherine Powers, Rita Scott, Valencia Williamson, Thomas Worthy.
And those are all
And
affirmative? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I apologize. I was on mute and I raised my hand the first time just to ask one quick question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Scott. Go ahead.
That's okay. I am voting yes, however. Has there been any concern from the DeKalb County Police Department that's located on the same site?
This is AJ. I can't speak to that. I have not heard of that directly. Kelly Davis, who's also on the call, perhaps you might have a little bit of insight on that.
I'm sorry, Ms. Scott. Please repeat your question.
Has there been any questions or concerns from the DeKalb County Police Department, South DeKalb Precinct?
Not that I'm aware of. I know during the planning phase, there was some engagement with them, but I don't believe that they have expressed any concerns at all. So we'll make sure, we'll reach out to them again and have very robust engagement.
Thank you. I know it's on the very same site, so that's why I was asking.
Yes,
It's only separated by driving.
Yes, ma'am. It's right across on the other side of Shepherd Road. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am voting yes.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. The resolution passes. Thank you, AJ, for the presentation. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the approval of service modifications for December 14th, 2024 on Route 191 by Mr. Ryan Van Sickle, Director of Technical Services and Service Planning. Ryan?
All right, thank you, and good morning, Chair Blakely, Vice Chair Powers, CEO Greenwood, Acting Chief Peart, and members of the committee and executive team. Happy to be here this morning to update you on the proposed December service changes and to present a resolution and to request your approval to implement those changes. Next slide. To recap the change, we're proposing to modify Route 191, Riverdale ATL International Terminal, to connect it to additional employment opportunities, as well as to consolidate some low-frequency alternating services on the route. This change would not increase operator requirements or operating costs, and a Title VI service equity analysis has been conducted on this change as it qualified as a major change and did not identify any potential disparate impacts or disproportionate burdens. Next slide. To look a little closer at the South Cargo element of the change, we're proposing to extend Route 191 along South Loop Road to the South Cargo employment area by the airport. South Cargo is home to approximately 3,000 jobs that are not currently served by our transit system, many of them with air cargo carriers who've requested service. To do this, we'd adjust the frequency slightly, reducing it from every 40 to every 45 minutes. And I also would like to point out we are in coordination with the Department of Aviation for an agreement that would provide a turnaround location for our buses as they serve this area. Next slide. Further down the route, around Georgia 138 and Flint River Road, we're proposing to consolidate alternating patterns that currently have low frequency service. Currently, Route 191 buses alternate trips between Georgia 138 and Flint River Road. So every other bus operates along 138 on a frequency of 80 minutes Mondays through Saturdays. The other buses operate along Flint River Road with the same 80-minute frequency Mondays through Saturdays. Presently. By consolidating this service to operate all buses along Georgia 85 and Flint River Road, we'll be able to improve those frequencies to every 45 minutes Mondays through Saturdays and hourly on Sundays. While we would be moving Route 191 from Georgia 138 to Flint River Road for all trips, Georgia 138 will still be served by MARTA service. Route 198 will provide service on 138, and there is a section of Terra Boulevard that would be affected that will still be served by routes 192 and 193. And lastly, I'd like to note that this is consistent with the existing current plans for Clayton County's transit service. Next slide. To gather feedback about this proposed change, MARTA held a hybrid public meeting at the Riverdale Town Center in Clayton County on September 12, 2024. The venue was accessible by MARTA bus service and is an ADA accessible venue as well. In addition to the in-person meeting, the video was live streamed on YouTube, and the in-person meeting included an additional hour-long session where attendees could review the proposed route change and engage with MARTA staff and planners to talk about it. Next slide. The hearing was attended by 8 members of the public and had been watched 191 times, had been watched 191 times on YouTube. 7 public comments were made and 2 written comments were submitted, and I'll provide the detail on those in another couple of slides. Next slide. To advertise the hearing, ads were published in several papers, including the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Clayton News Daily, and Mundo Hispanico. There was in-person canvassing that took place at the Lakewood Station and the Clayton County Justice Center Transit Hub. Bus hangers were distributed on Route 191 buses, and in addition, yard signs were placed along the impacted route at key bus stops and shelters, 24 locations of those. Next slide. A ride-along meeting also took place on Route 191, where staff were able to share information about the public hearing, share information about the change, and receive feedback from riders on the route. In addition, the hearing was shared on social media. There were posts across MARTA's various multiple social media platforms, as well as information placed on itsmarta.com, along with a formal press release. Next slide. In addition to our YouTube views, the social media posts gathered over 24,000 impressions on Nextdoor, over 2,900 impressions on Facebook, and over 500 views on Instagram. Next slide. During the public comments, a MARTA customer did ask staff to review Route 198's schedule to consider an earlier morning start time, as Route 198 would be the primary service on Georgia 138. We are looking into that request. In addition, we had comments related to safety and security at bus shelters, particularly related to lighting and cleanliness. Comments were also made about buses that may miss trips or did not operate, as well as operators that were driving too fast. However, we also did have a comment of support for the Route 191 change, and we also had comments that our operators are doing a great job. One attendee came equipped with a list of operators that he wished to commend, as well as several of our MARTA call center staff. So we had some positive feedback from the public meeting as well. Next slide. So now that we've carried the proposed changes through the public hearing process and finalized them, we're asking your approval today for a resolution. If the board approves the following resolution, the changes will take place on December 14th, 2024. Next slide. So at this point, I'd like to request your authorization or approval of a resolution authorizing the approval of service modifications for December 14th, 2024 on Route 191. This authorization or resolution will authorize the general manager, CEO, or his delegate to implement service modifications on this route, and I'd like to respectfully request your approval. Next slide. Thanks, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for that presentation. Could I get a motion in a second, please?
Jim Durrett will
Williamson,
make the motion.
motion.
I will second it then. Jim Durrett.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion for Mr. Van Sickle? No? Hearing and seeing none, let us vote.
Eleven votes. Stacy Blakely, James Durrett, Roger Farson, Frida Hardage, Jennifer Ide, Segura Jones, Al Pond, Catherine Powers, Rita Scott, Valencia Williamson, Thomas Worthy.
Any abstentions or nays, Ms. Tyree?
No.
Thank you. Are there any other, and thank you for the presentation, Brian. Are there any other matters to come before this committee? Hearing and seeing none, I call this committee meeting adjourned and we'll pass it on to Operations and Safety. Thank you.
Okay, we need to, anyone that's raised still has a hand denoted with the raised hand, we need to take those off. All right, I'd like to go ahead and call the Operations and Safety Committee meeting to order. Tyreen, we may have had a dropout. I think I've seen 11 votes. Do we need to take a quick roll with the raise of hands?
Jacob Zagabi dropped off.
Okay, you got
Yes.
it. All right, first item on the agenda is the approval of the previous minutes from October 22nd. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
I'll move
Hardy.
approval, Al.
Hardish seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? Can we please vote?
I have 10 votes. Is there anyone else that need to vote? Stacy Blakely, Jennifer Ide, James Durrett, Frida Hardage, Al Pond, Roger Farson, Valencia Williamson, Segura Jones, Catherine Powers. Did somebody put their hand down? You. Okay, you're putting your hands down before I could finish. Okay. Okay, we have 10.
All right, and are there any abstentions? The motion passes. The next item is a briefing, and that briefing will be led by Dedrick Parham, Director of Safety and Management Systems.
Good morning, Chair Pond, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Dedrick Parham, and I am the Director of Safety Management Systems in the Department of Safety and Quality Assurance. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 2, which is a briefing on the corrective action plan closures of the 2022 3-year rail safety audit conducted by the State Safety Oversight Agency, GDOT, and its supporting consultant, TRA. Next slide, please. Here's the agenda this presentation will follow. Next slide. The authority to conduct the audits are through federal mandate 49 CFR 674 state safety oversight. This authority is also extended to the GDOT SSOA program standard. Next slide. Section 7 of the program standard addresses the state safety oversight agency's procedure to conduct triennial audits performed on site at MARTA. The SSOA conducts triennial audits to assess MARTA's compliance with written safety plans, policies, and procedures, as well as applicable federal, state, and local requirements. Of the GDOT program standard covers the process and procedures for conducting those triennial audits. Next slide. This is the schedule of audit activities and dates. As a part of the process, the following items were issued: draft reports, factual reviews, responses and concurrences by both MARTA and the SSOA. The audit was completed in September of 2022. The process of proposing and accepting of caps occurred over a 3-month period. Next slide, please. This chart shows the comparison of the number of audit findings and corrective actions in the previous 2 triennial audits, 2019 versus 2022. The findings were separated into audit categories. The categories were deficiency and areas of concern. The categories resulted in caps. Caps are corrective action plans written by MARTA to address the audit findings. In 2019, we closed 16 findings before the completion of the audit. In 2022, 2 were found to be closed before the audit's end. MARTA had substantial improvements over the period of time between audits. The next slide will show how drastic those improvements were. Next slide, please. In 2019, we had 116 caps as of July 2021. We had 97 caps open, and there was a dramatic decrease through January 2022, from 97 open items to 29 open items.
Dedrick, can you do me a favor and pause for a second? We seem to have lost the YouTube feed, so I just want to see if we can get that back up quickly.
All right. Pause with the positive report.
I'll say.
Great graphic.
All right, so the YouTube screen is blank, but they are getting your voice. So I think we can move forward with that, and we'll just make sure that the presentation is attached to the minute. So sorry for the interruption.
Okay. So getting back to this, thank you for letting me know. We did accomplish this decrease through enhanced meetings with the state safety oversight every 2 weeks. In an effort to come together between MARTA and the SSOA, we collaborated to close caps from the 2019 triennial audit. Working together led to an understanding that led to fewer identified caps in the 2022 triennial audit. This also led to MARTA closing the identified caps in a shorter amount of time. Example of these caps from the 2022 audit are DEF 4.1-1, which was MARTA escalator semi-annual and annual inspection records were inconsistent for inspection frequency. To close this cap, we conducted an internal safety audit to ensure all maintenance and inspection frequencies were conducted in a timely manner. The inspection frequencies and documentation were verified. Another example is AOC 4.2-1. Structural inspection records are not organized consistently from year to year and could be confusing to readers. To close this cap, MARTA ensured the pages and general organization of structural inspection reports conform to industry standards. The inspections were being completed on both. We just had to formalize our processes to show how reporting was consistent with performance in the field. So it made it easier for the auditor to understand. Next slide, please. Well, this is it right here. Key actions that resulted in the decreased audit findings included collaborations with the State Safety Oversight, GDOT. We conducted monthly enhanced oversight meetings, MARTA business improvements, and MARTA assisted the SSOA with closing of Special Directive 22-1. Due to our collaborative efforts between MARTA and the state, a large positive impression was made on the FTA. Both agencies were invited to tell the story of shared practices on successful implementation at the annual FTA Joint State Safety Oversight and Rail Transit Agency Workshop. Next slide, please. The SSOA provided official notice of CAP completions in the form of a checklist that all items were closed on July 11, 2024. Our next audit is anticipated to occur in the fall of 2025. With the year to prepare for our next audit, MARTA is conducting readiness activities. We've implemented a rules compliance program to enhance awareness of how we manage risk and improve our audit processes. We have an internal safety audit program, and we plan to perform a pre-audit audit of the offices that will be interviewed as a part of our next triennial audit. Our goal is fewer CAPs than the previous triennial audit. Yes, we know it's aggressive, but that is our goal. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Well, the next slide for everyone is our ending slide. So I just want to thank you all for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Parham. That's some great results between the prior 2 years, and I recall 2 years ago that there were a large number of items to address. So congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you.
Are there any questions, Mr. Parham?
Let me congratulate you.
Thank you.
Same here. I remember when I joined the board in 2019, like Al Pond.
And they were impressed and pleased, and they wanted us to share our story with the rest of the country.
So that was the partnership with Georgia, with the DOT and MARTA.
Yes.
I thought, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Mr. Parham? If not, the other two items on the agenda are for your information only. One is the July 24 key performance report, and the second item is associated with a contract to come before the board at the next board meeting for using a state contract for purchase of non-revenue vehicles. Any other items, discussions? If not, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
All right, thanks everyone. Please stay safe.
And I think that concludes all of the meetings, correct?
It does.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Okay, Ms. Scott.
When I first attempted to join, I couldn't be heard. The special meeting, was that what was taking place at that time?
I'm not sure if that, I don't have a notification as to when you joined, but we did begin with the special meeting.
Yes. Yes, Rita.
That require a vote?
It did,
Yes,
and we had to have a special meeting because folks left that dropped us below the 8 the last time for the contract requirements. But I think that we had enough over the 8 at the time that we had that in the vote.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.